fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, here to bring you our Falcons vs. Raiders Week 15 game preview. The one of many primetime games for the Falcons. This one's on Monday Night Football. I know we all thought maybe it would get flexed out given the state of the Raiders, who I believe are currently in the slot for the number one overall pick. And the Falcons have lost 4 straight and are now 6-7. Not a lot of intrigue surrounding this game from a national perspective, obviously. But it is in Vegas. Maybe that has something to do with it. But the Falcons are playing on primetime for the last time this year, it seems. Maybe they make the playoffs, so that could change. But this Falcons team heading to Las Vegas to take on a Raiders team that obviously is struggling. They have their share of issues. They have their share of injuries, particularly at the quarterback position, where it looked like starter Aiden O'Connell was potentially going to be out for the year with a very serious knee injury that has since been downgraded to a bone bruise, which is great news, obviously, for the Raiders and for O'Connell, but seemingly unlikely that he's going to be able to play this week against Atlanta, which would then lead to former Falcons starting quarterback Desmond Ridder taking the field for Las Vegas, which of course it feels like that just is inevitable. So I'm going to assume that they're not going to throw Aiden O'Connell back out there, like a week after a serious bone bruise. I think that would be pretty irresponsible of the Raiders to do that, even though I guess he wants to play. But it's likely the Falcons are going to face Desmond Ridder on the other side of the field for the first time since the two sort of split with his trade to Arizona earlier this offseason. So a little bit of intrigue there, the Desmond Ridder revenge game, as many are calling it. But ultimately, this is, a must-win game for Atlanta. Every game the rest of the way is a must-win game for Atlanta because they are in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. They were at 6-3. They had plenty of breathing room. That breathing room has all disappeared. And honestly, even if they were to win out, it's not guaranteed that they make the playoffs because if the Bucks win out, will obviously finish with 11 wins, and the Falcons will only finish with 10. Now, it seems unlikely that both the Bucks and the Falcons would win out in that scenario. Still 4 games left for both teams, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But first things first, you got to win this game. And while it is an easier opponent on paper in Las Vegas, the Falcons haven't really done a good job of beating anyone over the past month. So we'll have to see how the Falcons do against a team that they're actually going to be favored against for the first time in several weeks now. So we'll see how that plays out. But this Falcons team obviously has an opportunity here to right the ship against an easy defense for a change. It's been a while since they've gotten to play an easy defense. They've played 3 great defenses in a row here with the Vikings, the Chargers, who were the number 1 scoring defense, and the Broncos, who are also up there. This Raiders defense, not one of the best defenses in the NFL. I believe they are in the bottom 5 in most statistics. So again, an opportunity here for Atlanta going up against an easier opponent to start riding the ship offensively, possibly for Kirk Cousins to have a little bit of a bounce back game after his worst month of his career, arguably. So we will see what happens there before we dive into this matchup, including what we know about the injuries, which it's a Monday game. So I'm recording this on Thursday. We still haven't heard anything about the injury report. So I'm hoping it'll come in during this recording, but if not, we'll just have to kind of go off of what we've heard so far. But also, how the Falcons match up with the Raiders offensively and defensively. We'll get into all that here. Before we do, I want to bring you guys a real quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number 1 source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting options, BetOnline provides you with all the action, the ability to bet on the games while they're happening. This Falcons are going to be favored for the first time. That might be tempting. I think I would be reluctant to bet on this Falcons team, but you will be getting, if we're being honest, you will be getting the Falcons at a discount. They're only 4-point favorites against the Raiders. I think on paper, you would expect this Falcons team to probably win by more than that. Obviously everyone's down on them considering the last month, but I do think that there could be some value to be had there, but again, I don't bet on the Falcons, so that would be up to you. But no matter what you want to bet on, BetOnline's got the largest selection of odds on everything from football, college football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, MMA, boxing. They got it all. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to betonline.ag today, and don't forget to use our promo code when you sign up. Believe, BLEAV, for your 50. Oh, well, it's not necessarily the same promo I used to do, so don't want to say that. But there are different promos. Whatever promo it is, put in that code, and you will get your welcome bonus, whatever they're offering at the moment, on your first deposit by going to BetOnline. BetOnline, the game starts here. Thanks again for sponsoring the show, guys. Yeah, so to start the show would normally be when I would do the injury report, but since it's a Monday game, we haven't really heard a whole lot. Obviously, for the Raiders, the big one to monitor would be Aiden O'Connell, who was the starting quarterback. I really don't think it's particularly likely that Aiden O'Connell is able to play this week coming off an injury that looked that serious. I get that it wasn't as serious as they thought, but ultimately, I think that he's unlikely to play. So, we will see. In terms of guys that were out, I know the Raiders were down Zamir White at running back during this game due to a quadricep injury. They were also down Nate Hobbs with an ankle injury. So I'm not, I believe the other guys like Alexander Madison and Jacoby Myers were able to play. So, other than that, I think the team was relatively healthy. I know the Raiders also have a couple of key players on IR, including Christian Wilkins, Gardner Minshew, who was the starter to open the year, on IR as well. So, missing definitely some guys on defense. We'll have to see how the Raiders fare in terms of the running back situation with Zamir White out last week. Alexander Madison questionable. It could be Amir Abdullah again. It could be Sincere McCormick. We will see how that goes. But in terms of the Falcons injuries, Atlanta also, not terribly, not faring so poorly at this point. Last week, Jace McClellan was declared out, and he was just placed on IR today as the Falcons signed Carlos Washington Jr. to fill his spot on the roster. So I think the only guys we're really looking at, unless there were things that popped up in the last game that we're not aware of yet, Ruka Rororo coming back from IR. We'll see if he is activated. He was able to get in a full practice to close last week, so could be very close to a return, it seems. Mike Hughes, again, he started the game but didn't look quite healthy, and was eventually pulled for Clark Phillips, so we'll see if there's any change there. But we'll have to monitor that. But again, we haven't seen the report yet. As far as I know, there aren't any new injuries, but again, that can change. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see certainly what's going on with this injury report. Just keep an eye on thefalcoholic.com. We will have the injury report up there as soon as we get it, and we can monitor that over the weekend. But for Atlanta, nothing too crazy, it looks like. For the Raiders, obviously, the quarterback situation is the big one to monitor, and also that they have a couple of key players on IR. So, again, this is a situation where we should be looking for the Falcons to have a big advantage, both in the health department and on paper in this one. And we will see how that plays out. But, the first place we should probably take a look is how the Falcons match up with the Raiders offensively, because that's sort of the side of the ball that we're really looking to carry this team, and we were expecting to, and it hasn't come through the last few weeks. Let's take a closer look at Atlanta's offense. All right, Atlanta's offense matching up against this Raiders defense, which has one of the NFL's best pass rushers in Max Crosby, who's just a fantastic player. If he ever escapes Las Vegas, I would be trying to sign him immediately. But really, the issue is that, the Raiders just don't have much else defensively, especially in the secondary. They do have a safety that I liked in Trayvon Merrick back from the 2021 draft. I was a big fan of his. I think he's pretty good. But other than that, they're really trying to cobble it together, and it doesn't help that, again, that they've lost some guys to injury as well. I know last year's top 10 pick Tyree Wilson has finally been able to play this year, and he's been, a good run defender for them. But, they're really dependent on Max Crosby sort of taking over games. And, guys like, they're kind of relying on guys like Kayvon Chason and, Adam Butler. Stuff's, tough at linebacker as well. Believe not a whole lot going on there. I think they moved former safety Divine Diablo, which one of the best names in the draft back when he came out as well, down to linebacker. He's just a very light linebacker, at just over 220 pounds. So, this is a situation where obviously I think where the Falcons are going to try to get as many corners and, the strength of this Raiders defense is that D-line, especially when they're healthy. So you want to get as few D-linemen on the field as possible. The Falcons are probably going to lean on their 11 personnel, even more than usual in this game. I mean, last week we saw them switch it up a bit more. I think they're probably going to be pretty heavy 11 personnel in this one. And the Raiders just, in terms of their secondary, like I said, I like Trayvon Merrick, but relying on a lot of young players right now. Jack Jones at one corner spot. Rookie DeCamerion Richardson from Mississippi State, 4th-round pick, is currently playing at the other corner spot. And then Darnay Holmes in the slot. All of those guys are struggling. They're not bad necessarily. DeCamerion Richardson is having a pretty tough season. I believe he's in PFF grade 116 out of 118 corners. That's obviously rough. But it's a defense that's really struggling, and this is an opportunity, obviously, for Atlanta's offense to come in and take over. Raiders 30th in scoring defense, 15th in yardage, which is actually not too bad. You look at their pass defense despite the issues, and they're 13th in net yards per attempt, 15th in yardage allowed. It really hasn't been that terrible. They just allow a lot of touchdowns, and the same thing with the run defense. They're pretty average in run defense in terms of yardage and yards per carry. But they just allow a lot of scoring. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Raiders offense, which we'll get to, which is, of course, the most turnover prone offense in the NFL, even more than Atlanta's, which is really saying something. They just turn the ball over a ton offensively. And that, of course, leads to big problems for your defense, pretty much universally. The Raiders, I think, in the red zone are 25th as well. So it doesn't help either when you struggle defensively in the red zone, plus all the turnovers and all that stuff. So really, Atlanta, I think this is a Raiders team that actually doesn't give up tons of yardage. It's just that they have trouble keeping the ball out of the end zone, and they're very mistake prone. So this is obviously a situation, I think, where the Falcons probably want to continue hammering the run game that was so successful against a really, really good Vikings run defense. So you hope that they can now continue to make that happen against maybe a lesser run defense here, and hopefully get the passing game going a bit more against a secondary that's really not very good. With Atlanta's weapons and hopefully Kirk being able to stay clean, this should be an opportunity for Atlanta's offense to get it done, through the air and on the ground, and really just need this team to stop making dumb mistakes, stop turning the ball over, and they should have the clear advantage offensively against this Raiders defense, but we just haven't seen them really play a clean game offensively, a turnover-free game in 4 weeks, so, and the passing game just hasn't been able to get the ball in the end zone either, so this is an opportunity to fix some of those issues. It is the first easier defense they'll play, so you like the way it looks on paper, certainly, for the Falcons heading into this one. They just have to execute it, and that, unfortunately, has been the biggest problem for Atlanta so far. Let's move on now to looking at how the Falcons' defense matches up with this Raiders offense. All right, Atlanta's defense actually performed pretty well against the Vikings outside of some hilariously bad coverage busts. Through three full quarters, it was 21-21. Vikings have a great offense. The Falcons weren't expected to shut them down, but they were keeping it close enough, keeping it in play for the offense, which to that point had not been perfect either, but at least they were keeping pace. There was some hope, obviously, for the Falcons to find a way to win that game. things fell apart in the fourth quarter, and that had to do with turnovers offensively, turnovers on special teams, and just more coverage busts and more just big problems. The Falcons were just kind of outmatched by that team and everything that the Vikings can bring to bear. But now going up against a Raiders offense, which, like I said, the Raiders offense 27th in points scored and 25th in yardage, 32nd in turnovers. They've turned it over 25 times. And despite passing at the fourth highest rate in the NFL, the Raiders are 26th in net yards per attempt and 16th in yardage. And 14th in touchdowns. They just haven't really had a lot of success there. In terms of the rushing attack, they are 32nd in yards per carry and 32nd in yards. They just really don't attempt to run the ball very much, which, given how that looks, it's probably, for the best. They're just not really going to lean on the run. They kind of are required to pass the ball. And, I think, Gardner Minshew was not great for them. Aiden O'Connell has not been particularly great either. So I guess we'll see if Desmond Ridder can do anything for them. So far, it's been nine starts for Gardner Minshew, 4 for Aiden O'Connell, 0 for Ridder so far. We'll see, if any of those guys can do anything. We'll see who can find success. But these guys have been getting sacked a ton as well. Gardner Minshew took 29 sacks in his 9 starts, which is an absurdly high number. I kind of can't believe that's true. That's wild to me. Aiden O'Connell took 7 in his 4 starts, and then Desmond Ridder's also taken 7. So the Raiders have allowed 43 sacks. That's actually pretty crazy. The Falcons, for example, have allowed 26. Seems like a much more normal number. But yeah, that is wild. So, obviously you're looking at the Falcons' sort of resurgent pass rush to find more success here. And it's kind of weird because you look at this Raiders offensive line, and a lot of these offensive linemen, at least according to PFF, I haven't watched a ton of Raiders football, forgive me. These guys, like 3 of these guys are ranked quite highly. I know Colton Miller has really had a resurgence in his career, especially towards the end of his rookie deal. He's a lot more reliable player now. Jordan Meredith at left guard is currently rated as PFF's number 8 guard. That's impressive. Dylan Parham on the other side at right guard, also in the top 20 guards. The issues seem to have come at right tackle, with DJ Glaze actually starting for them. And he's been fairly average, so not too problematic, it looks like. Really, the surprising one is that a guy that I thought was going to be, a surefire plus starter for someone in Jackson Powers Johnson, he's kind of been the weakest link on that O-line, which is surprising. But, ultimately, none of these guys are graded out poorly. Just some of them are average, and some of them are well above average. So kind of crazy to me how bad the pass blocking has been, given that these guys don't really look to be that problematic. But, it's hard to tell from PFF grades, and I haven't watched. But it's also possible the quarterback has a lot to do with it, or other aspects of the offense. Like I said, haven't really watched a lot of Raiders film. Raiders fans, feel free to let me know if you know exactly what's going on with all the sacks. But, at this stage, really, this Raiders offense goes through Brock Bowers. I'm sure Georgia fans are well aware of Brock Bowers. He's been fantastic. One of the best rookie tight ends we've ever seen. He's fantastic as a receiver. He's the number 1 receiver on that offense. And they're going to funnel the ball to him as much as they can. And he's going to make them look smart for doing it. The rest of the receiving core outside of Jacoby Myers, who I think is still a good NFL wide receiver, pretty uninspiring. Trey Tucker was a guy I liked coming out of Cincinnati a couple years ago. He's been a deep threat, but not really much else in terms of reliability. I believe the Raiders also added Terrace Marshall Jr., who I think is starting for them right now. And obviously we know for the Panthers, he never really amounted to much there. So not really expecting a ton. At the running back position, again, the Raiders have really struggled on the ground. We'll see who ends up playing, whether Zamir White or Alexander Madison or any of these guys can get back on the field. But I know Sincere McCormick played last week, and he actually looked like he did a pretty good job. And then they also have Amir Abdullah, and we'll see if any of those other guys can get back out there. But really, for the Falcons defense, it's going to be finding just blanketing, bracketing whatever you can to Brock Bowers and just force the other guys to beat you. That's kind of the secret. I think to beating the Raiders is, and then obviously getting pressure. So I think we're going to see the Falcons probably try to send 5 as much as they can. Probably put, safety help and as much, probably multiple defenders on Brock Bowers every snap, and then trust that Terrell and your other guys can kind of hold up against these wide receivers. They're just not all that dangerous. And, you look at the quarterback too, like Aiden O'Connell's a functional quarterback. Never really been a particularly good one, but functional. He could get the ball out there to his guys. But I think, what you're looking at, if Desmond Ridder plays, we kind of know what to expect there. There are accuracy issues with Ridder, decision-making issues. He's capable of having good games. We saw that in Atlanta, but more often than not, he's going to hurt you. Maybe Ridder has improved. He's been with the Raiders for a few weeks now. We'll have to see, who we play. I still think it's going to be Ridder. And again, if that's the case, it's very likely that the Falcons are probably not going to have too much trouble with this offense as a result. But again, I think you lean on the guys that have started to make plays for you. You continue to rush Caden Ellis. You let Arnold Ebiketie loose a little bit more. He's been really impressive the last few weeks. You continue running your sim pressures and those things that have helped you. And you keep the pressure on. Keep doing what you're doing defensively. Obviously, you got burned, with your aggressive style, like the more aggressive coverage style they were starting to roll out over the last couple of weeks. Against the Vikings, you got burned. It's going to happen sometimes. But I think they were also playing well for a big portion of this game. Where, I don't think you need to give Desmond Ridder and these receivers that level of cushion. You don't really need to be too concerned there. Just play your game, trust your guys, and try to continue, maximizing the pass rush, which to our surprise, the Falcons have added 9 sacks in the last 2 games. They have officially reached 20 sacks on the year. A couple weeks ago, I wasn't sure if they would. So that's obviously a step in the right direction. We'll hope they can keep that going, because I think, again, I don't know that anything is going to be fixed if this, if the Raiders go to Desmond Ridder or Aiden O'Connell. Both of those guys are prone to some turnovers. So, again, this Raiders offense turns the ball over more than anyone else in the NFL, 25 turnovers so far. So the idea is the Falcons can benefit from some turnover luck this week. Hopefully do a good job defensively, and then do what they need to do offensively to get out ahead of this Raiders team early, and then use that run game to sort of to send this one home, and not put too much on Kirk Cousins, because we don't want him out there risking the ball too much. But I know the Falcons are going to be, probably trying to rehab Kirk's value and let him chuck the ball around a little bit. So we'll hope that goes well this week, ultimately. But yeah, that's sort of the takeaways from this game. The Falcons are favored on the road by 4 points, which, that implies a pretty big favorite, right? Probably, usually the home team gets about 2 points for being at home. It's pretty much a touchdown level favorite for Atlanta. That seems fair to me, given how they've looked. Again, this Raiders team is capable of playing teams close. And a lot of times they do play teams close, especially in the first half, but usually the second half is where things kind of get away from them. And, that's what happened against the Bucs. Things were close for most of the game, but the Bucs really ended up pulling away late, ended up winning by, multiple scores. So that's kind of how I envision this one too. Probably not going to be a super comfortable early game stretch for the Falcons. Probably going to be sweating a little bit. But, I think Atlanta should be able to take control of this game as it goes on. Hopefully capitalize on some turnovers, not turn the ball over themselves, and get out of Las Vegas with an important primetime win, so that they can keep their season alive for at least another couple weeks. The idea obviously is that you win in Las Vegas, you go beat the Giants at home, and then you see what happens against the Commanders. If you can manage to find a way to beat the Commanders, then you're in great shape, and you're probably, we'll see what happens obviously with the Bucs and the Chargers this week. The Bucs continue to have the injuries pile up for them, and the Chargers, as we know, are pretty good. So if the Bucs drop that game and the Falcons win against the Raiders, then you just have to win out, right? Then the decks are cleared. You don't have to worry about the Bucs losing again. You just need to win your games, and it's all good. That's obviously the better situation to be in. But we'll hope for the best here with Atlanta. That they can manage to figure that out and get a big dub here against the Raiders. Get back on track. It's been 4 weeks without, 5 weeks technically without a Falcons win with the bye week in there. So let's get a big dub. Let's get back on the right track and get this team back to winning football. And this would obviously put the team at 7 wins. So they would have a great chance then over the remaining 3 games to get more than 7 wins for the first time in a long time, unfortunately. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm Kevin. I have Alcoholic Kevin. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done that already. Leave a comment if you got it. We'd love to hear from you. Check out the community Discord server. Check out the Patreons, patreon.com/FalcoholicLive. If you want to support the show, same thing with the YouTube channel memberships. We will try to be back for the Monday night post game if I can. It's really going to depend on my internet and technology situation. I'll try to keep you guys posted on that. I will be mostly out next week. We will have my interview with Michael Turner, the burner, coming out next week. So even if I'm not able to put out any more shows because of technology, we will have that coming out, I think, on Wednesday instead. In the place of Falcaholic Live, we'll have that come out on Wednesday. So you guys can enjoy that episode, tide you over until we get back to business the following week. But yeah, appreciate everyone hanging out. If you're craving more Falcons content, you haven't seen Adon and I break down the decision to stick with Kirk on Falcaholic Live last night. And then, of course, earlier in the week, Trayshawn and I broke down that Vikings game and sort of the coaching issues that we're starting to see. Hopefully we'll have more positive topics after this week. It's been, when you get into a 4-game losing streak, it's only so many places you can go with that analysis. So we'll hope things start to look up here for Atlanta. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you guys next week, hopefully for the victorious post-game show. But if not, we'll see you guys soon after that. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Thanks to BetOnline for sponsoring the show. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, folks.